Webcast coverage of the Minnesota House of Representatives is brought to you as a public service by House Public Information Services.
Okay, questions?
Explain how the system is going to be changed and what the limitations are there under the current economic conditions.
Well, the beauty of this bill, Tim, is that it's always been a scalable bill. It was written to be phased in. Other states have done this type of a bill in 2 or 3 or 4 bienniums. Now that we've been socked with this deficit, it's going to take longer, but it is our vision bill, and we could get started if we had just 1 penny, and of course we'd like to do better. But it's our goal to get started and to have the vision and then measure as we go along, make the legislators accountable for how far are we getting with what's needed so all kids can graduate ready for success.
What does it actually change in the funding system? Could you explain that?
It simplifies the funding system by having all students count as one. So high school students do not count more than little kids. Kindergartners count the same, so there's automatically all-day kindergarten in here. And then instead of using politics to measure how much is needed for each different type of student and each different type of district, we took the research from PS Minnesota that actually costs out what does it cost based on research for every kid who has special needs, such as being poor or not speaking English, being special education. How much does it cost for each type of district, whether they have the high cost of the metro area, the sparse conditions of the rural area? It's a need-based bill that funds what every kid needs equitably to graduate ready for success and adequately.
So how much would this bill, House File 2, cost, and then how much would the new Minnesota Miracle fully implemented years down the line all cost?
If we put in 1 penny, it'll cost 1 penny.
Right.
If it's fully implemented, it would be, counting the property tax relief, $2 to $2.5 billion. So of course that's not going to happen this year, but that shows us how behind we are in this no new taxes era, this not investing in students era, relying on property taxes era. We would like to turn that around.
Yeah, sure. So do you want to make the switch over this year, but then, okay, you want to phase that in. Ultimately, how much are state taxes going to have to go up to counterbalance it? It depends on how much additional funding well, let's say you go dollar for dollar. Let's say you're even Steven for what you are today. Okay, and you just flipped over to this formula, how much additional would have to come from the general fund?
I want to emphasize that you can't flip over for the formula. It's a phase-in thing. So if you phased in 5% of the new formula, the old formula would be still 95% of what we have.
It's much like what happened on transportation, that when we did the transportation bill, it was very important that as we phased our way to a new way of looking at equitable solutions across the state, that harm wasn't done to existing students living under the current system. And so that's why it's going to take a while longer. That's what we're saying. We understand this is going to be a longer journey because of the financial situation we face. But we do know some things. We know that part of a long-term economic recovery for the state and a brighter future includes a more equitable funding source for all our students so that they can have a high-quality education.
Can I also add that just 2 things I'd like to add is the state, Tom Stinson, has always indicated that education has been one of the strong points of our state in economic and job growth in the whole history of our state of Minnesota. The other thing is I represent 2 districts that have not been able to pass operating levy referendums, and due to that, our students can't wait anymore. I mean, it's like our infrastructure with our transportation system that was crumbling that could not wait anymore until to find relief. We have to try to find solutions and build in the fiscal responsibility as we find these solutions. In my districts, when we can't pass operating levy referendums, it means that schools are cut. It means that class sizes are raising. It means that staff is cut. The schools are closed. Class sizes are rising. extracurricular opportunities are not being provided, which is important in education as well. So our kids cannot wait any longer for us to, not to do this, in my opinion. And so, in my opinion, this is a reform that is needed, just like our transportation reform was needed in the last session.
And by the way, John is the new vice. Oh, well, just background. I'm saying John, Representative Ward is the new vice chair of K-12 Education Finance, since Representative Morrow went on to be an assistant majority leader. Representative Ward is going to be our big help as vice chair, as you can tell.
Chair, are you folks prepared at some point, and I realize this is staged in over a number of years, are you prepared at some point to raise general taxes, statewide taxes, to fund this? Because that's ultimately, I assume, what's going to have to happen. If you're lowering property taxes, you're going to have to raise statewide taxes. Now is not the time to raise statewide taxes. Is it going to have to happen a few years down the road?
That will be the question of the whole session. What are members willing to do for our priorities? And I think we haven't had those discussions within our caucus yet. We haven't seen what the governor's proposing. You know where people like me stand on it, but we have to come to a consensus. This is very much a consensus bill, and so we have to come to consensus also on how to pay for it.
Isn't it going to be hard enough just to keep K through 12 from being cut this year, much less adding something to K through 12 this year?
Well, it's going to be a very challenging year. There's no doubt about it. I think that to begin and to show Minnesotans and to continue the conversation with the public in Minnesota and the commitment to students, people do need to understand what needs to happen to get to a high-quality education all around the state. And I think this bill lays out that vision for what that looks like. It also lays out what the reform is, what sorts of reforms that we need. But yes, Norm, it is going to be very difficult. I think that does not mean, just like a pioneer family who would first put together their sod house, and they would dream of a day that they would be able to build the wood house and be able to build the barn. We are at the point where we need to be able to say to Minnesotans, even if this is a long-term goal for what it looks like, we need to be able to say to these Minnesota students, we want to provide that high-quality, equal opportunity education that's going to mean that we are going to have a brighter future in this state. So it is absolutely, we feel a little like those pioneers on a covered wagon right now in terms of how long the journey might be, but we are committed to making it there.
Isn't it for the governor to sign?
The governor has been talking about education finance reform, and we actually haven't been able to talk together about what he might have in mind. But I do know that he's very interested in reform and accountability. And so I have met and worked with, for instance, the Chamber of Commerce and the Business Partnership. And I think that Parents United, the part that the governor would like the best, although you could ask him, would be the innovation revenue that was always going to be in the first plan 1% of the new money, and now in this plan, because of feedback from groups like the Chamber, it's going to be 5%, which means that districts have to be making progress with students in their learning in order to get that money. If the students are making progress, they get the innovation revenue, and if not, then they have to come up with a plan based on evidence and research and promising practices to figure out how they can get their students on track. And that makes the new money very, very accountable, 5 times as accountable as the first bill.